So yeah, so the next part is, what we'll be doing is starting to get the rear end in and looking at starting to square the rear end. So one thing I like to do is get a set of clamps, just put a bit of tape over the little feet on them. Okay, now obviously tape the engine plate, and this is the reason why. So we've got our big builder's level. You can actually use anything that's straight as long as it's straight. So whether it be a piece of timber or just a piece of box section steel, as long as it's straight and got a bit of length on each side that you can hold over the edge, anything will do really. Okay, so now obviously we'll grab our arms, get them on our torsion bars, and the next step we'll end up chucking the other side on, and then we'll go from there. So obviously what I've got here, it's got our set of blocks in there with a bar running across, and then digital level on there sets the arm level. Back around to the other side. Okay, so every chassis manufacturer has its own specified arm length, which is obviously from the centre to centre of here. I'll be obviously measuring metric. Most of them are given imperial, so what we'll do is go from the edge of that to the centre of there is roughly 315. So go 315, but we have to add the halfway from there to there, which is plus 6 equals, and we divide that by 25.4 equals, so it's roughly 12.63 inches between the two, so it's almost bang in the center between 12.5 and 12.75, so pretty much on the money with that. So now the main part begins. Obviously measure from the edge up to our motor plate. Got 8, 2, just come back around this side, take the same measurement. Obviously the torsion arm was just a little bit too out of adjustment, so just crack the nut off, slide that out. We need to lengthen that measurement, so 1.5 turn, back like that. Just to lighten up. And as mentioned earlier, it's a little, got the torque ball on, so just a little dollop of nickel anti-seize. And it's at this point here, the audio on the camera bombed out, and I've had to voice over the whole thing from here. Anyway, finally we're ready for the rear end to drop in. First I fit the torque tube and roughly centre the two in the car. I follow up by fitting both torsion arms to the bird cages and only the right rear radius rod at this point. Now I sit the car on its ride height blocks. So 0 degrees on the arm is what we call ride height, which would be basically what the car would be when it's sitting race ready on the grid. And the same on this side. Got our ride height block in there and lower arm connected, but not the top radius rod yet. We'll introduce that once we've timed both bird cages to 0 using our level again. Back to the right rear. That's 3.5 degrees. These arms are obviously set to last year's chassis, hence the reason why they're out. This may seem odd at this point, but we got the torsion arms parallel to the motor plate earlier using our 1/2 inch rod, so there should be no real reason to adjust the torsion arms as they are set, and all adjustments from here should be done with the top radius rod. How we'll do this is set the right rear with the radius rod and roll the left hand side to 0 by hand. Now this is where the torque tube being connected starts playing its part. So now we have 3 constant points, being where the torque tube bolts to the rear end, the torque ball, and the right rear bird cage. Now it can still swing side to side, out of square, until we get the left rear bird cage set to 0. But once that is set, it will align the torque tube in the chassis and make the rear axle parallel to the motor plate. All I do here is loosen off the jam nuts on both ends of the radius rod and turn it until we get 0 on our level. As you can see, 0. And what I forgot to show is I set the level on the machine flat on the rear of the bird cage, which is to represent that the 2 pickup points are plumb to each other on the bird cage when this is set to 0. Something that never hurts is to mark the centre of the chassis at the torsion rack. This gives me a datum to measure how offset the rear end is, which should be the same as our motor plate offset up the front. When the measurement of the motor plate offset at the front matches the measurement from the datum to the centre of our rear end, you know the rear end is aligned in the most natural and true position in the chassis. Now down to the left rear, and as we can see, it's currently 1.5 degrees. Here's a really good example of the torque tube aligning itself as I roll the bird cage back and forward to get 0s. And just like the other side, 0 degrees on that machine flat. Finally, it's time to present the left-hand radius rod. I first attach it at the front and then loosen both jam nuts. But anyway, the important part here is to hold the rear rod end so both ends adjust the same, and keep adjusting it until the bolt goes in without disturbing the bird cage position. And yes, it's got a bend in it, and yes, it's meant to be like that. Give it a nip and level time again. Yep, there we have it, still 0. Again, sliding the bolt into the bird cage the way we did prevents any preloading or adverse binding by trying to mechanically force the rear end into position. The Jacob's ladder, W-link, paddle, whatever you prefer to call it, is up next. Again, the gliding method is used, so I adjust the heim on the bird cage until the pin just glides through. And with piss poor camera angles, you can use your imagination on how it floated in freely. Also, a that ain't going nowhere shake never goes amiss. Here's a really good indication that the rear end is aligned in the car, as the torsion arm heim has ended up smack bang in the middle of the lower birdcage bolt. And we're 2 for 2 on that front. Now the rear end should be square in the car. And all the little rule of thumb checks we've been applying along the way have been showing very promising signs. Our final check consists of loosening the 4 torque ball housing nuts, pulling the collar back on the torque ball, then sliding it back in to see it central in the housing. What we are looking for here is the ball going straight into the housing, and not jumping over as it seats into the housing. As mentioned at the start of the video, I have sprayed the torque ball with Vertex Lubricants Multi Envirolube. This keeps it nice and free, but not sticky and messy like it would with grease at this point. I use the 3-piece style torque ball housing, and to do this check on this style of housing, I have to hold the insert into the housing as I slide the torque ball forward. And it doesn't get much better than that. From here, grab the tape measure and just remeasure the motor plate to the axle to confirm the car is square. Well, there you have it. That's how I do it. So be interesting to see if anyone else has got their own way which they'd like to share, maybe in the comments, or even pick up a GoPro, even your iPhone, and maybe just go through and film your own one and put it out there. Like I say, I'll obviously put it out in the court of public opinion, so everything I have said and done will be held and used against me. So like I say, just one big thing, it's a way that I've kind of taken a few different ways in and found the best way that works for me, and I've always found is the most effective and fastest way to do it too. So going from there is, like I say, if anyone feels that like this may be a way they want to see their car, don't be afraid to just jump on either like Facebook or Instagram, even YouTube. Just flick me a message or whatever it is, and I'll be happy to explain and help out if I could. Even if you feel that I've done something wrong or want something explained further, just don't be afraid to shout out. We're only a message away. So like I say, this ends up this one. So like I was saying, we're going to start we've already started, I should say, because one's gone, but like I said, we're going to be doing short, sharp videos of 4 to 5 minutes roughly of each of the car